Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone, and Happy New Year. As we're seeing the end of 2021, Tformers.com is hosting a variety of Transformers reviewers to do kind of a year-end recap, a year-end list of top 10s or best of, worst of type things. So I wanted to contribute to that. So today I'm going to be going over a personal list, purely all my picks, of the best and worst Transformers released in 2021. I'm mostly going to be breaking this down by size class, and I'm going to have a few extra categories toward the end just to mix things up and keep them interesting. So I hope you're looking forward to joining me for this. I don't normally do lists or anything, or top 10s or anything like that, but I figured I'd give it a try, right? No time like the present. So with that said, I'm going to just go over each one, starting with the best, moving on to the worst, giving my reasoning for each. You may agree, you may not. I'm sure there'll be lots of agreement and disagreement in the comments section. And then I'll do kind of a quick recap of the year at the end, and then we'll ring in the new year together for 2022. Starting out, I'm going to go with what I believe is the best Core Class figure released this year, and that goes to Core Class Kingdom Megatron. A lot of people, may love this, may hate this design. It's not purely G1, it kind of mixes some influences here and there, but I actually like it for just how original and creative it is. It's got a very interesting transformation. It does something a bit new. Like, yeah, it's Megatron, he's G1 base and he's a tank, but he just achieves this in a very different way. Plus, you have the really cool addition of his own pistol mode being included as like a little Easter egg, which he can wield either in his hand or have it attached to his back, like his old silencer back attachment. So I really like him for how different he is. He's not purely just going for the, simplified G1 version. He's doing something a bit different, a bit more creative, and I think he stands out for that. And I very much appreciate him for it because he's one of the more interesting looking Megatron toys we've seen in a little while. Now for my worst Core Class pick, I unfortunately do not have a figure to show you, so I'll just go ahead and superimpose an image of the figure. And this is the Core Class Hot Rod, who isn't widely available yet here in the US. It may seem unfair to take a figure that I don't actually own and say it's the worst, but I think I've seen enough of it through leaked photos and everything to where I know it's just very, very dissatisfying. And the fact that they're going to go ahead and re-release it in Legacy is even more of a shame because I think it's so lackluster. It's very simple, it's very hollow. It has an absolutely absurd transformation. For some reason, Hasbro and Takara are obsessed with using a fake car hood for Hot Rod's chest and then putting the real car hood somewhere else. Now, in the Voyager Class toy, they actually do a good job of hiding that away. On this toy, it's just thrown on the backs of his legs and it looks absolutely awful. Plus, he's incredibly hollow looking. He's got just kind of an ugly design, so I'm really not fond of him. I think, even without getting one in hand, he's easily the worst Core Class toy released in 2021. For the best Deluxe Class figure, I've decided to go with Airazor. Now, this was a tough one because there are just so many Deluxe figures out there, and I could name quite a few. I think Noah the Sharkticon is really good, and there's a lot of really good picks out there throughout all the different franchises. But when I really look at what I consider to be just pretty much a flawless figure, Airazor is what comes to mind. She is a near perfect update of the original toy to bring it more in line with how she appeared on the show. Really doesn't compromise much in doing so either. They really did a good job of folding her wings away and all that. I know a lot of people are kind of disappointed because her feather colors are a little too light. In the show, she does appear a lot closer to black or maybe a very dark brown. So I can understand that frustration, but I think mold-wise, she just comes out looking absolutely fantastic, right? And, her existing colors are really more of a nod to the old toy than the show, so she's kind of a hybrid between the two, and I think she really excels at being just kind of a quintessential version of the character. And plus, she's just a great transformer, she has amazing posability, she's a lot of fun to play with. For the worst Deluxe Class toy, I decided to go with Kingdom Cheetor. Cheetor to me was disappointing in pretty much every way. The only thing I really like about him is the cheetah mode. The cheetah mode looks good and looks a lot more like a real cheetah than the original toy, which was very bulky, looked more like a tiger than a cheetah. So it worked better for Cybertron than did Cheetor. Where this toy fails, I think, for one, is just the way the robot mode comes together. I get they were trying to be creative and do something different, but I think it's just a little too far off the mark. Like when you have these big old just animal legs sticking off the fronts of his shins that don't... I mean, they're trying to kind of emulate their blue robot armor, but failing pretty miserably. And then the weird torso that just looks too thin, too cylindrical. The lack of the gut gun, just there's a lot of things about the mold that are already an issue. Then you couple that with a baffling paint scheme. Like Airazor, her colors at least made, somewhat kind of sense because they reflected the old toy. For Cheetor, this weird baby blue and bright yellow makes him look more at place in a younger line, a Cyberverse or Rescue Bots type line, than Kingdom, which was supposed to be, very kind of earthy looking and very reminiscent of the Beast Wars cartoon. And luckily, he did get that Netflix recolor that was leagues better when it came to color, even if it did sacrifice a bit of paint. And pretty much all of his other recolors, both present and future, like the recently leaked Night Prowler, have been way better. Especially Ravage, who's like a very, very heavy retool. Really just sharing like the bottom parts of the legs and maybe the front cheetah arms, and that's even kind of debatable. Some people say it's new tooling there, maybe. In fact, I was tempted to name Ravage as the best deluxe, but I think he's just held back a little bit by being a Cheetor retool like that, because he does sacrifice some aesthetics to kind of work that in. But this guy to me was easily the most disappointing deluxe figure of the whole line. He's one of the first ones put out. Technically, I think he actually first started showing up like in very late 2020, but he was slated for 2021, so I'm going to count him here. To me, this guy is just a huge, huge letdown in pretty much every way, and really brings down any of the retools and stuff that come after him with just an overall pretty bad mold. As a runner-up for Worst Deluxe Toy, I decided to nominate Kingdom Trax. Now, Trax looks good, which is something he has way above Cheetor. He's a very good-looking figure, and he looks like Trax. However, structurally, he's honestly kind of terrible. He's got a lot of issues, both in the transformation, when it comes to putting stress on parts and potentially breaking some clear plastic, to having these really poorly put-together legs that just kind of flop around, don't hold together well. Trax just is not a satisfying toy. He's great to look at, great as a display piece if you get him to pose right, but as a transformer and an action figure, he's ranked pretty poorly in my opinion, because he's so fragile, he's so delicate, he's floppy, and he just seems like he could have been a lot better. And Road Rage gets a little bit of a pass just because of how incredibly rare of a character she is. I mean, she's only had, I think, 2 other toys, maybe, before this one. So I'm not as hard on her because I'm just happy that we have a Kingdom Road Rage and something in that generation scale. For Trax, though, I can't let it go. To me, he's a very big letdown. Plus, I hate the fact that they took his 2 little like roof cannons and just made them like one singular turret type piece. It seems like a real steep cost-cutting measure. So yeah, I'll consider him almost as bad as Cheetor, with the saving grace of at least looking pretty cool. For the best Voyager Class toy, I decided to go with Kingdom Cyclonus. You guys might be noticing a pattern here. I may have certain preferences. The Cyclonus toy to me is just the most perfect figure of this character ever made. He did something I didn't think was really possible, and that was create a really screen accurate version of the character in both vehicle and robot modes. And he accomplishes that through some really awesome engineering and a super clever, interesting, unique transformation. I'm absolutely in love with this toy. I think he does it better than a lot of third-party Cyclonus figures out there, and certainly better than any of the official stuff that's come before. Got plenty of posability. He looks great. The proportions are awesome. He's nice and streamlined. He looks very, very good. I mean, the cockpit transformation that they use to accomplish this is just amazing. I love that he doesn't have a nose cone or something hanging off his back. He just looks excellent. And I really love this figure. And even though he's one of the first Kingdom figures to come out, he really holds up against pretty much everything that came after him. Now, there is a rumored/leaked toy colors version that's coming out as part of Selects, I guess, next year. I'll definitely get it because the idea of getting a toy colors version of this is appealing. It's supposed to represent the extra Cyclonus' Armada guy that flies off in the movie. But But I will say, even though I plan on getting that and I think it's cool, I think this version will still look much better. Even though I'm usually a stickler for toy colors, I think in Cyclonus' case, the cartoon colors just work a lot better. They really just kind of catch your eye. It's very bright, but not too bright. This like brownish, pearlish color right here is just really unique and interesting. I don't think a toy colors version is going to improve on that. It'll just be something different. As a runner-up to Cyclonus, I would like to submit Studio Series 86 Wreck-Gar. He pretty much accomplishes what Cyclonus does, being the best official interpretation of the character we've ever received, especially when it comes to screen accuracy. He also has some really cool tricks and stuff. He's just a little bit behind Cyclonus when it comes to things like empty parts, obvious kibble. Like his backpack, it's nice, it's pretty streamlined, but unfortunately it kind of gives away the fact that his head is not actually the front of the motorcycle like it should be per his transformation, like the original. So he loses a little bit for just having like the obvious like double kibble thing going on, where Cyclonus like hides all of his stuff away perfectly. But this is still an amazing, amazing figure. And if you are a G1 fan or fan of the movie, I would pick him up. I'm still seeing him in stores here and there, so I would definitely go for it. You won't be disappointed with this guy. Now for the worst Voyager Class toy of the year, in my opinion, I'm going to have to go with Transformers Kingdom Grimlock. And what makes Grimlock so bad really is just how good he could have been. A lot of people were pretty hyped when they first heard the rumors of this guy coming out, and they were expecting something, that really scratched that nostalgic itch for the original Beast Wars Grimlock toy. And unfortunately what we get makes some honestly very baffling choices when it comes to the color usage, like using this really dirty bronze instead of a gold color, and then the color layouts and designs and stuff. The arms in particular look really bad. How you just have this harsh cut from white plastic to gray plastic. The fact that they cut down on the paint from what you see in some old photos where like the eye on the chest isn't even painted in. And he's just very, very disappointing. Now the mold is great. The Dinobot mold is pretty solid. The only thing I really didn't like about that mold was the fact that the sword sticks out of the tail a little bit in beast mode and looks kind of odd. His looks a little better because it's the same color as the tail. And that new head sculpt is awesome. Perfect head sculpt. To me, it 100% comes down to just the plastic colors and the paint. It's very ugly. And it could have been great. There are pictures circulating out there on the internet that look much, much better than this guy. So I'm putting him up there just for how far this toy falls from its full potential. As a runner-up for Worst Voyager, I'm going to just have to throw in Rhinox here. Not because he's a bad toy. Not because he's a bad Transformer. He's fine as both of those things. What he is, in my opinion, is a bad Rhinox. For something that's supposed to be an update to a toy that came out almost a decade ago with the Thrilling 30, I think he falls very short. Like with Grimlock, they made some really odd decisions when it comes to things like colors. In his case, also molding too. Like everybody hates the head. Everyone's like, why would you change his head like this? And apparently it's based off of a mobile game of all things. Like, who would choose like low fidelity mobile game graphics over the original CGI model? I don't get it. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not as crazy about his transformation as I am for like the Thrilling 30. The legs are, you can see a big kibbly mess. So even though he's okay, and if you just take him as a figure itself, I mean, the complexity and all that's there, I just think he's very, very disappointing for an update to Rhinox. Now for the best leader class toy, I'm going with one that's a little bit different. This is the Generation Selects Leader Class Galvatron. Now I'm basing this not off of value, because if you saw any of my reviews for this Galvatron mold, I don't think it's really quite a $50 toy. Like definitely better than a Voyager, but not really up to leader standards. Even with like the extra little guns they give him, I can't see it. But rating the figure for just what it is, the Galvatron mold itself is awesome, especially for the robot mode. I think the alt mode's a little bit lacking, but the robot mode is something people have been waiting for a long, long time. And while I do like the regular Kingdom version, and I think his colors look great in his robot mode, for one, I think the colors do not look great in the alt mode. It makes him look very gappy with how the colors are kind of scattered around, and makes his alt mode look more like that of a Bayverse character than a G1 character. Plus, this new guy, he just comes with a little bit more in the form of a sticker sheet, which is purely optional. You can either put all the stickers on like I did, or you can leave them off, and that allows you to basically create either a G1 Marvel Comics version of Galvatron or a more toy-accurate version, so you get more choices. So I think he just edges out the regular Galvatron, one, because I just like the toy colors more and think they work better for this mold, but also you get a little bit extra value there and a little bit of extra, choice when it comes to how you want this guy displayed and which version of the character you want him to be. Now for the worst leader class toy, I decided to go with the Kingdom T-Rex figure. And the reason he beats out the Kingdom Megatron for worst toy is, for one, they both, they're obviously the same mold. And the Megatron mold has a number of issues, especially when it comes to transforming it. There are parts that are known to break, parts that are known to require excessive force for the transformation. For me, what comes to mind really is these arm panels right here. He has this cool, rubbery skin exterior, but that actually causes a lot of very strong clearance issues when it comes to, flipping these panels back and forth, to the point where I have to use a tool to kind of slowly work that rubbery skin, through the cracks, because I'm afraid of just trying to brute force, I'm going to snap these things off. So the transformation is a real problem with this guy, and it makes him not very fun to transform. He works much better as a display piece in either mode than he does as a toy that's supposed to transform back and forth between them. So you already have that issue, which, disappointed with Megatron because I love Kingdom Megatron. I don't know if you guys could tell that if you watch my videos. I absolutely love Kingdom Megatron. And I was very kind of begrudging of the Kingdom toy because I couldn't bring myself to hate it because I love the character, but I know that the toy has issues. Then you enter T-Rex, a figure I was so excited about until I saw what it looked like, because I own the original. And this one, again, just like the Kingdom Grimlock and Rhinox, really baffling choices when it comes to the colors. For one, he's lacking in paint when it comes to the Megatron, but also they decided to take his sandy tannish color that they use for the robot pieces and make it this really dull, ugly gray color that just absolutely hurts the look of the toy. And it clashes with all those other colors. It looks so bizarre. And then they screwed up with the face sculpt. He was supposed to have his own face sculpt that had more of a grin akin to the original mold. And instead, they just used the regular Megatron one, but still painted silver over his mouth like he still had gritting teeth. So you end up with a character that's literally just a recolor, and then he's got silver lipstick for some reason, and it looks really silly. So this, to me, was the most disappointing leader class toy of the entire year, because I know how cool he could be, and he was the lowest effort recolor I've seen in a while. Except for maybe Grimlock. I don't know. But at least Grimlock has a new head, right? And I'll say that the Tyrannicon Rex, who's the other use of this mold, even though I think his robot mode, or I guess her robot mode, is kind of plain, she more than makes up for it with a really highly detailed and highly painted beast mode. So still ends up beating this guy out. To me, he's just a whole bunch of disappointment. Now, before I move on to the next category, I want to just point out that I'm not going to be doing a best or worst Commander or Titan class figure, because we only got one of each of those this year. You could argue that there's the Shatterglass Jetfire, who's not officially available here in the States yet. I mean, some people have him, but they usually got it from outside sources, so I'm not counting him. He's not really due out till next year. And then you could argue that we have Titan class Black Zarak, but again, he's not supposed to drop till next month here in January. So I'm not counting those. Most people do not have those yet. So I'm going to skip those categories. You probably already know how I feel about Rodimus and the Ark. I love them. I think they're not maybe worth their price, but still good figures. Now moving on to our special categories. This first one is most disappointing canceled figure, as in figure I'm most disappointed was canceled. And you can see here I have the Beast Wars toy Polar Claw. Now, this category obviously can only cover figures I know about, And, I'm sure there are figures that the public has no idea were actually canceled before release. But we do know a good bit about what was canceled from Kingdom because of early promotional art. And among those characters that appeared on the art but never made to the toy line, Polar Claw was one of them, in addition to some extra fossilizers and the Autobot gears. But to me, Polar Claw was the one I was most hyped for when I saw the picture, and then most let down by when I found out that they weren't actually going to release this toy, that he didn't make the cut. In fact, if rumors are to be believed, he was actually bumped off for Tigatron. Originally, King of Tigatron was just going to be a Cheetor recolor, and then they finally decided against doing that because it would put him massively out of scale with the other characters. Plus, they probably also figured it's just a lot easier to upsize the Cheetor engineering, spruce it up a bit and release Tigatron. So he got bumped off for Tigatron, if what people claim is true. And that's very disappointing because Polar Claw to me is just one of the coolest Beast Wars designs. His toy can be a bit wonky, right? It's got some odd proportions and a weird face and all that. But the actual design, the concept behind him, the artwork you see on the toy packaging and the comics is so, so cool. And a modernly engineered version of Polar Claw's design would be very welcome. Plus, think of all the recolor potential, right? You got Polar Claw, you get Grizzly 1, you get, what was the other one? Barbarian or something? Or were those the same guy? I forget. But you have options with him. He would have been really cool to get. So, as much as I like this toy, sun bleaching and all, it's just like Tigatron, just turns yellow when he's in a window. He's cool for his time, but he's very outdated, and I would love to see a posable, fully articulated, really cool, mostly gimmickless and less prone to sun bleaching version of this guy. Because when I saw that artwork, I was so pumped, and when I found out that they canned him, man, that was a big, big letdown because this is a character I'd love to see get more attention. He is luckily appearing in the new Beast Wars comic by IDW, so if you're interested in Beast Wars, you can always check that out and see how they characterize him there. Now for these last two categories, I'm going to have to go pictures only because the figures, they're not out yet. One of them, and we'll get to in a second, isn't even fully confirmed. It's just something that's been kind of leaked. So the first one I want to hit is the most anticipated toy for next year, for 2022. And there's a lot of really cool stuff out there. There's also a lot of really disappointing stuff out there, which I'll cover here in a moment. But for most anticipated, this is a toy that the existence has only just recently been rumored by some people that are kind of in the know on these things. And that is for a proposed Thunder Clash figure, a Legacy, or maybe it'll be Selects or whatever, Thunder Clash that is presumably a retool of the upcoming Legacy Motormaster toy, which kind of works out, right? Because the new Motormaster, again, according to leakers, just the cab turns into the robot as opposed to the whole, truck with the trailer and everything, which I am personally disappointed by. I'm pretty let down by the direction they're going with Motormaster. But what I am hyped for is taking that concept and turning that into the first official retail Thunder Clash toy that's been released since the very original, right? The Europe only Turbomaster Thunder Clash. That's really exciting. People have been asking for this guy for a long time, and I think even though the whole, robot cab and trailer base isn't ideal for Motormaster, it's perfect for Thunder Clash. And I think with some clever retooling and hopefully, something that's not too compromised being a retool, this is going to be a really, really cool figure. And I'm hoping that maybe we'll see some other Turbo Masters. In fact, some people have pointed out the possibility that because Motormaster is obviously a combiner, there might be some retooling to the other Stunticons to make them some of the smaller Turbo Masters, and maybe we'll get a Turbo Master combiner. Now, it's a cool concept. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. However, I don't want the individual figures to be compromised by their combining gimmick. We saw a lot of that during the Prime Wars trilogy, when you had characters that don't normally combine just get shoved into combiner slots, and it made the individual bots not always so great. So, cool concept, but only if the execution's there. And, with how the engineering's evolved since Prime Wars, I'm a little more confident they could pull it off better this time. All right, and next is my least anticipated figure for the new year. So this is something that we all know is coming. It's one of the first ones to have been revealed. And for me, it's actually going to be the Legacy Deluxe Class Prime Universe RC. Now, I love RC from Transformers Prime. one of my favorite Transformers characters ever, both, in her design, her characterization. The voice work was absolutely fantastic. However, the new Legacy toy we've been given, to me, is just very uninspired. Now, they already said how they're kind of taking any Prime characters that show up and retrofitting them into like a G1 aesthetic. That's why the new Legacy Bulkhead looks so different from his Prime incarnation, which is fine. Like the Legacy Bulkhead, even though it's taken some getting used to, at least looks like a good looking toy on his own. For RC, she's like very, very obviously set up as a pre-tool for something else. And we already know what character that's going to be. Her mold is going to become the new Velocitron exclusive road rocket thing in Legacy. So because of that, the toy itself is not a great RC. The proportions just do not do her justice. Like, RC is known for being a very lithe looking transformer, right? That's something that really helps her stick out, right? Her motorcycle mode is very sleek, her robot mode is very sleek, very ninja-like, very agile. And now she's just kind of like blocky and meh, and she just, the expression on her face isn't very interesting. And to me, for such a great character to get such a subpar toy, I think it's not cool. They could have done RC so much better than what they did, but they were trying to maximize mold usage, and because of that, we'll probably get a really good Road Rocket, just not a great RC toy. Okay, and that's going to wrap up my best and worst Transformers of 2021. I'm sure you notice there's a pretty obvious bias into what I like, right? It's pretty heavily the Generations type stuff, your Kingdom, your Studio Series 86. No Bayverse stuff, no Cyberverse. Not because those aren't excellent toys in their own right. It's just not what I, consider the best of the best. And, of course, I'm sure some people will vehemently agree with that, especially, Bayverse. A lot of people love Bayverse. And there's been some really good stuff out there, like the new Studio Series Grindor and all that stuff. But to me, it's just not scratching that itch of what I feel, I guess, most at home with when it comes to Transformers. So now, having shared, what I think is, the good figures, the bad figures, I want to know what you guys think. As far as my different categories, what would you have put in there? What figures are you most looking forward to in 2022? What figures are you maybe the most disappointed with their cancellation? I'd really love to know what you guys think down in that comment section. If you did enjoy this little countdown here, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for my first ever real Transformers list that I've ever done. And thank you for joining me here on New Year's Eve, if you are watching this when I publish it, or sometime now in the new year of 2022. And with all that said, I would like to wish you all a very happy new year, and until next time.